put the place up.
Welcome to Your Next Chapter, where we spotlight audio creators and industry leaders shaping the future of podcasting. I'm Jeremiah Tittle, CEO of Next Chapter Podcasts, and this season we're exploring how museums are using podcasts to build trust, share powerful stories, and expand their reach. Making the case that every museum needs a podcast. Whether you work in audio or museums, there's plenty to learn. I know I learned a ton from these conversations. Today, I'm joined by my friend and collaborator, Kevin Blackistone, an award-winning journalist, Washington Post panelist, and journalist contributor, as well as co-host of Our New South, our podcast with Levine Museum of the New South. We recorded this at the AAM conference, the American Alliance of Museums, in LA in May, where Kevin spoke on our podcasting panel. I hope you enjoy this conversation. We talk about the emotional power of museums, behind-the-scenes moments from Our New South, and why this work matters. Let's get into it. All right, I'm talking to someone I'm a little nervous because we've never spoken before. It's kind of a first time meeting, the famous Kevin Blackistone. No, we'll do a proper introduction. It's very special for me. I'm so glad you could make it out to LA for this museum conference, AAM 2025. We went out prospecting in May of 2024 in Baltimore, which was cool to walk around and find out that there was no one else like us there. There were no other podcasters at the conference. So I was a little surprised that this year we had two panels on podcasting, and we were one of them. It was so great to have you on that, but I'll give you a proper title and you can correct me if I'm messing up any of the long resume, which I'm probably wasting time doing this because everybody knows who you are, but I'll say you're the Shirley Povich Chair.
Well,
Is that, you were, okay.
I am a professor of the practice at the University of Maryland, Merrill College of Journalism, from which you have a degree.
I do have a degree. The University of Maryland was good to me. You were also good to me in helping me become an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland at the Philip Merrill School of Journalism. And it was such a wonderful experience for 3 semesters to teach the next generation, or at least, as I think you put it, poisoning the minds of the future. Future journalists, which
In the right direction.
We need them more now than ever, do we not? But yeah, no, it's really special to have you here beyond, the other accolades, which we could go on and on. The Washington Post, NPR contributor, continue to do, and as a panelist on ESPN's Around the Horn. And one thing I learned about you I don't think I knew prior to maybe reaching out to you to ask if you wanted to co-host a podcast with a museum in Charlotte, North Carolina, that has this focus on the South, was that you love art.
I do love art. I mean, I collect a little bit of it. I love going to art museums. I love the color, the way it makes you feel, the way it makes you think. I love the backstories on art. I wish I had more money to buy more art. I've got some sitting on the floor in my house just because I haven't figured out where to hang it. But visual art is fantastic. I even I know a couple people who are painters, who are portrait artists, and it's just cool to see them create. It's art is cool.
I don't know how many other people, friends. In our case, friends and colleagues, I'd argue. I'd like to think we're friends. We were neighbors before. That counts. But who would enjoy as much as you are, I'd say, beaming at being at a museum conference? Why do you like being here?
Well, first of all, I like museums. And second of all, after doing this thing with the Levine Museum of the New South, it just got me thinking about why more museums don't do this, and how it's a great idea that you've helped pioneer, and that we should get out and talk to some other museums about doing this. And for you to do it, your company, and hopefully bring me along on the ride. I love museums, and I love fact-based history. I often say that that journalists are current day historians, right? What we report today goes in the annals of history for perpetuity. So I'm attracted to that, and there's just a bunch of cool museums, and I like the way that people present things. There was, at our panel discussion this morning, there was somebody who stood up, who asked a question and said he was from the Whitney. And I love the Whitney. And I remember I was at the Whitney I went there for some museum, some exhibit. I can't exactly remember what it was called, but the exhibit brought me to tears. And so that's the way that, museums can move me. Last year, I was invited to speak at the University of Alabama. So I said, great. But I asked them, I said, two things. I want to come down on a football weekend, knock that out. They had Tennessee. It was great. I'd never been to Tuscaloosa for a football game, although I've covered Alabama any number of times. So that was cool. And then secondly, I said, whatever date you bring me down, I want a day in between. So bring me down like a Thursday, because Friday I want to go to Montgomery and go to the Legacy Museum, which I did, which was incredibly moving. Just a rush of emotion when you walk in the first part of that exhibit and you see these sculptures of enslaved people almost like crying out for help. And then another part of the museum you go into, and there's a wall of jars of earth, and they are the earth under which the progeny of enslaved Africans in the South had been lynched. Like, I guess where their blood dripped. I mean, it's an incredibly moving thing, and that's what museums can do. They can capture history and really touch you viscerally. So I think it's important. It's important. I'm glad to see people here just doing that important work, and I'm glad that we're able to share that important work through the Levine Museum of the New South with the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's special. We're going to agree a lot on this interview. I think one thing that was special for me and for us with respect to this second season of Our New South, working with Levine, was, our effort to get folks to talk about difficult subjects, I think we doubled down on that in season 2, and I think that was really important that we, took that initiative. One of the prospective guests ended up being a panelist with us today. You referenced the panel that we were on this morning, this roundtable about podcasting and museums, and Diamond Adams, one of the producers, education coordinator at the Whitney Plantation Museum in Louisiana, has been in the news recently. Now,
right. Just the other day.
You just forwarded me and Frankie, co-executive producer here on the Our New South podcast, this New York Times article about funding issues and for reasons that we can get into. I don't think we need to mince words here about the situation that's going on. It's interesting environment to be here at this museum conference when all this stuff is going on. But kudos to Diamond and the work that they're doing, and I was glad to get her perspective on the panel.
Yeah, it was great, and this is museums can do revolutionary work, right? And the Whitney Plantation is one of those plantations that is doing revolutionary work because they are one of the few plantations that tell the story of the plantation through the eyes of the enslaved. And I think that's critically important. And yes, it was great to meet her. It was great to interview her on our segment, and that's on our episode. And that's what we can do. We can elevate the stories and the educational value of museums.
I think there's a real it's an interesting intersection when you talk about the trust factor, the theme of this conference, museums and trust. This research, this study that determined that that museums are the most trustworthy form of media it was not surprising and surprising at the same time when I read it, and it just further, I think, confirmed in my mind the value of ignoring kind of the location being a constraint in terms of these museums and the impact that they can have on people's minds and opening people's minds. That there's a real opportunity with podcasts, and I think that's a beautiful thing. We've talked about a bunch of heavy things, but I would also like to talk about kind of some of our maybe ongoing jokes we've had, maybe behind the scenes, text threads and et cetera with the Our New South team, you, Robert, and this great group of people that we have working on the podcast. Grits have been a very consistent fodder for hilarity, and
It's no joke, man. I love grits. I made a pot of grits just the other day. Did you? I sure did. I did them cheesy. So cook them for about 30 minutes, and at the end of that 30 minutes, put in like a cup of cheese. I went with Parmesan, make it a little Italian. Oh man, so good, so good. And eat them hot out of the pot. And then after that, you just pour it in a glass container, stick it in the refrigerator. Then you can slice it up. You can grill it. Oh man, put a piece of fish on top of it, vegetables. Oh, you're making me hungry.
Sorry to do that to you. I almost took everybody to lunch earlier today at a place called All the Fixins, or maybe it's called Fixins, but which is the name of our most popular episode, the first episode of season 2.
That was our most. It was a great episode, and it's fun to tell the history and complexities of the South through food, and that's one of the identities of the South, right? Even, you can go outside of the country and people will think about Southern cuisine, Southern food, but the way we got into it, I just thought was, I thought it was brilliant, and oh man, Aaron Sanchez. To have him kick it off, celebrity chef, just his whole story, and the way he talked about integrating the food, how food was an elixir for him, right? In kind of rescuing him from going down a path that probably he shouldn't have been going down, that he talked about. Yeah, that was great. The food episodes are really cool.
It was really special, and I think that's a great example in terms of the importance of kind of authenticity when it comes to podcasts, where he didn't have to be so real with us, but I loved hearing that story from someone in his position to share how important that was for him. I was just wanted to ask you in terms of any other highlights that stood out to you from Season 1, Season 2, just anything that in terms of conversations that you had that you're like, it really just stuck with you.
Well, interviewing speech, that was a great get. And to hear him intellectualize the creation of hip-hop in a Southern setting, to juxtapose it to what was going on in New York on the East Coast or what was going on in Southern California, the West Coast, I thought was really good. That elevates the conversation about hip hop, right? That takes it to another level. Just the whole, I did not realize the impact of immigration on the South. And to me, and I think I returned to this theme a couple of times, but one image that I've always had of the South is that it was not necessarily a welcoming place for those who were not of the South. But our visits with the issue of immigration suggest otherwise now, right? I think there was a stat that 52% of 52% of all new immigration in the country was to the South? Was it something like that? Which is stunning, right? And then the places that they're from. I think we found out that most sub-Saharan African immigration to this country has decided to settle in the South. We interviewed a Nigerian American who has won office in the state of Texas. So that was eye-opening for me. If you had told me that beforehand, I would have doubted you. And it's critically important to what the New South is today.
The last thing I wanted to ask you is about, any anecdotes in terms of people reaching out to you, whether it was a surprise or just kind of gave you a point of pride, saying, hey, I checked out the podcast, really enjoyed it. It's nice to win awards, but there's something nice about the kind of word of mouth things that happen occasionally where people reach out and you're like, oh, thanks for checking out the show. Anything like that happen for you?
Oh, yeah. Maybe most notably, a friend of mine, Ann Rosen, who is a retired journalist, long time at the Washington Post. Civil rights was kind of like, I think, one of her beats. She's also the daughter of a famous reporter who covered the civil rights movement. She has stories as a kid about being a kid to this journalist who would have to go into the worst situations in the South. And she wrote a memoir about her father. At any rate, she sent me a note one day. She's like, I'm loving this podcast. And so that's like, that's a stamp of approval right there. To hear her say that unprompted. I let her know we're doing a podcast on the South, and she's like, she waited for the next episode to come out. So so hearing from someone like her say that was really cool.
Well, it's been so great to have you as co-host with Robert. Sad Robert's not here, but one thing I will say about the choice of having you, and you had to say yes. It was an invitation, of course, for you to host and co-host this podcast. But I want to give Levine some credit in the fact that they took a chance. Not that you're a person to be taken a chance on, but the fact that this specific show has a very specific nature in this, being a history museum. And obviously we know each other a little bit, but just I just want to give Levine credit for, being bold enough to maybe get out of their academia lane, except you are a professor, so I can't even say that. Sports, I think, is what you're known for, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, that was cool. I appreciate that. And, opportunities come from everywhere, and you just have to be willing to take them on if you think you can. And I'm glad that you thought of me, because I've told people before, I've gotten calls about podcasts before, and it's always a sports podcast. And, there are a gazillion sports podcasts. Not to say that means they're not worthy, but I really wasn't interested in doing that. And when you pitched this idea, I was like, that's interesting, because I'm I'm a fan of the South. I enjoy visiting the South. I spent some time in rural Georgia and then later on in Selma, working on a political story way back. And I just remember driving to Selma and finally seeing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which to me was always a black and white issue. And I don't mean race, I mean the photographs you see, it's in black and white. And then you get there and it's this lime green kind of thing. And, you actually see people and, you realize that this is now, not then. And you're thinking about all the history. So I've always had an affinity for the South. So it's been great. And then you didn't know that Robert and I had met, which was crazy at an academic conference. It's the what do they call it? University of South Carolina. When I think he was finishing up his PhD there, or maybe he'd already finished. I can't remember. But they had a conference on civil rights in the media, and I and a PhD student in Maryland had written a paper on Larry Doby getting into a fist fight with a white pitcher from the Yankees, and how the media had covered that because of course the compact with Jackie Robinson was you have to turn the other cheek. Larry Doby had no such compact, and he didn't turn the other cheek. And the media recognized that and wrote about this as the first retaliation of a black baseball player to a white baseball player. And so we wrote a whole paper about how that happened, how it was distilled to the public through the media, and what that meant for the time. So it was cool to I was like, hey, Robert Greene? Yeah, I know Robert Greene. Great historian, yeah, and he really is.
And talk about a historian who loves sports. It goes the other way.
Yeah, and loves the media. And just the other day, I got a call for papers for a journal. I forget the name of it was, and it was it was looking at 250 years of the black press, and one of the editors, Robert Greene. So there you go, small world.
It was meant to be. I'm so glad you said yes, Kevin. Thank you. A reminder, if you're interested in learning more about our Next Chapter Accelerator program, please go to nextchapterpodcasts.com/contact and we'll reach out to you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Next Chapter. I'm your host, Jeremiah Tittle. JT, our executive producer, is Nick Kastner. This is edited by Justin Cortese, and we drop episodes bi-weekly. Please follow the show, and thank you so much for listening.